So, the Carolina Hurricanes have acquired Scott Darling, thus the Hartford Whalers garb. Now, I would have worn Hurricanes, okay, but I don't have my Hurricanes hat yet. That hasn't arrived yet through Lids, so that's on its way. I like this move a lot for both teams. Now, for Chicago, this is okay. It's Corey Crawford's job. There would be somebody crazy enough somewhere to think, hey, maybe they'll protect Darling and maybe they'll work something out to keep Crawford. No. Darling is a UFA on July 1st. The interesting thing to me is that apparently the Hawks didn't tell Scott Darling prior to being traded that they were going to do this. So that's a little different. Usually, if a guy's been with your organization quite a while, in a situation like this, you'll go to him and say, "We're going to make this move." It's not, there's no protocol for it. It's just considered kind of, it's kind of what you do. For Darling, it's an interesting move in that if Carolina is going to protect him, they likely will want to send him to a contract first. So, starting today, odds are the Carolina Hurricanes are going to sit down and have the contract discussions with Darling. There was mention that Darling hadn't had any contract discussions with Blackhawks. Well, of course not. If this wasn't an expansion year, that absolutely would have happened. But because of expansion coming in, because you can only protect one goaltender, what'll happen is if Darling's able to reach, say, a 3-year deal with Carolina, Carolina will protect him and risk losing Cam Ward. If he balks at any contract that is offered by Carolina, or he says, I'm flattered, but I'm not interested in being a Hurricane long term, then they'll say, okay, no harm, no foul, and they'll leave him exposed. And then it's likely that Scott Darling will be picked up by Vegas. He's 28 years old. He's coming off of his best season ever. He shows every sign of being a starting goaltender. And basically the Hurricanes would have decided one of two things. Either we've got a new starting goaltender, or we've got our expansion fodder, and he can be the guy that gets picked up, and we don't lose anything else off our starting roster. And if somebody else is picked up, well, they got Scott Darling for a third-round draft pick. Goaltenders don't have the value on the market that they used to. So for anybody who's going to think, oh, couldn't they get a first? The answer is no. They got back the third that they got for trading Victor Stahlberg. That's what I've read anyways. That it was the third they got for trading Victor Stahlberg. So trade evens out. It's Stahlberg for Darling. We can debate whether or not that's even, but considering expansion, everything's up in the air right now. I like Darling a lot. I think he's a good goaltender. I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, again, here's the Hawks talking a big talk after they get eliminated in 4 by the Preds that everything's going to change, everything's going to be better, and we're not accepting these 2 first-round defeats, and there can be some big changes. They fired Mike Kitchen, and now they've traded Scott Darling. If these are the big changes that Hawks fans can expect, watch for Trevor Van Riemsdyk to get moved next. I mean, it's just, if you're going to make a big move, and I'm going to talk about that today or tomorrow, because I've been saving that video until I'm awake. I slept 10 hours last night, so I should be awake today. There's a problem if I'm not. Basically from the time I posted that video last night until now, I've been in bed, and 10 hours of that was sleeping, and it took me half an hour to wake up. So I'm laying in bed asleep, half asleep, like, okay, I should get up. Oh man, the bed's so comfy. So some of that. But yeah, for the Hurricanes, this is a good move. I think Scott Darling is the better goaltender. They need to sign him. Then they need to find a taker for Ward. And that's not going to be easy. Ward's 33. His cap hit's high. His totals. His save percentage has been iffy. He is the Richard Brodeur of this generation. He coasts on things that he's done. He shows flashes. He'll go 4 or 5 games where he looks really good. And you're like, wow, the old Cam Ward's back. And then he falls back again. And I use Richard Brodeur as the example because as a Canuck fan in the 80s, Richard Brodeur would have just a string of really bad games. And he'd have a few really good ones. You go, okay, all right, this is the guy who brought us to the Stanley Cup final in 1982. And then it would fall apart again. But Ward's a much better goaltender than Brodeur was. Richard was fine as a Canuck goaltender, and sure, he was facing the Edmonton Oilers 6 or 7 times a year with Gretzky, Curry, and the boys, and the Canucks' best defenseman at points was either Rick Lands or Doug Hallward. So, you know, and in Carolina, definitely Ward's had some of that too, where sometimes the defense hasn't been very good. Their defense was all right last year. Of course, the odd man out, no matter what happens, is Eddie Lack. I have a funny feeling that even with the expansion, that Eddie Lack may not be able to find work in the NHL, and will probably end up in Europe. I could see him going to the Swedish Hockey League, which would be good for him. There certainly have been plenty of goaltenders who've gone over to Europe and either had a fantastic second career over there, or spent 2 or 3 years over there and then come back and been decent. Kari Ramo comes to mind. Of course, it was KHL. And Eddie Lack could definitely be KHL bound. I could see that. But I think his time in Carolina and probably in the NHL is done for now. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments below. There isn't really a whole lot else to add, but this is expansion move. If Chicago wants to do something bold, do it. Pull the trigger. Do it. It's hard to do it before the expansion draft too, though. But I will get into that soon, because there are definitely weaknesses in Chicago in terms of their playoff game that they could address. But it's a huge risk. But for now, Carolina, if they have Scott Darling as a starter next year, I know the question is going to get asked, so I'll answer it. I do believe that Scott Darling would be capable of taking them to the playoffs. I also think that Sebastian Aho is going to get better next year, and that there's going to be a whole lot of people surprised at just how good Carolina should be right off the hop this coming season. They got off to a bad start in 16-17, and I think when 17-18 starts, especially if they still got the same coach who can say, hey, remember last year, I think they avoid that bad start, get off to a good start, and that can be all you need to give you the energy and the confidence to get into the playoffs. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, and thank you so much for watching. Past 1 million views on this channel, and it's had its bumps along the way, but it's been fun, and thank you very much for watching.